Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So thank you everyone for joining in this Japa meditation. Coming soon on 19th of August is Shri Krishna Janmashtami. It's like our biggest festival of the year. So one way we actually celebrate the festival is, yes, on the actual day we'll have so many festivities, and we'll be talking about that immediately after Maharaj's class. We'll be just going through our entire plans for Janmashtami, and we'll actually be sharing information how you can actually be a part of the festival, what services are there. So immediately after Maharaj's class, we'll be actually having a short presentation on the Janmashtami festival this year. So leading up to 19th of August, we request everyone to actually start preparing our consciousness for Janmashtami, right? So if you're not chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra on a regular basis, from now until 19th of August, you can make a determination to every day, at least 10 minutes, chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. And also we have a book called the Krishna book. It's all stories of Krishna. But the first few chapters actually talks about how Krishna actually appeared in this world. So you can read the Krishna book, chant Hare Krishna, and prepare your consciousness for Shri Krishna Janmashtami. Shri Krishna Janmashtami is our biggest festival of the year. We get thousands of people. So after the class, we'll have a short presentation. We'll be going through all the details, how you can volunteer, and so on. Okay. Also, we'd like to thank the devotees who have prepared the evening offering, the prasadam today. We have Sakhi Priya Mataji, Dilip Prabhu, Anusha Mataji, Radha Shakti Mataji, and Varsha Mataji. Haribo! So this is a service that's open every Sunday. If you'd like to come and help in the kitchen, you can always come. The service starts at 12 and goes on until 4 o'clock. Okay. Also, we'd like to thank the devotees who sponsored the feast today. So we have Aditya Prabhu and Shrivali Mataji. They have sponsored it for their son Akshad's birthday. Haribo. Okay, so let's pray for Akshad. Oh, I mentioned them and that they are. So we'd like to thank Prabhu. We just mentioned your names. Thank you, Hare Krishna. So they have sponsored the feast and it's Akshad's birthday. So we'd like to chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, praying for Akshad. So let's loudly chant the Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Thank you for sponsoring the feast, Prabhu. So during Prasadam, we'll have a short ceremony, birthday celebration for Akshad. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, today is also we are fasting for Ekadashi. So Prasadam after the class will be all Ekadashi Prasadam today. Okay. So without further ado, we'd like to warmly welcome His Holiness bkgoswami Goswami Maharaj. Haribo! And Maharaj will be giving the evening talk. So as I announced, there'll be a talk and then a short presentation on Janmashtami. At 6 p.m. we'll have the dinner prasadam in the hall. Okay. Thank you so much. So if you can kindly move a little bit more forward for the class. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Can everyone hear me? Yeah, okay. Because I'm using this wireless mic, So we'd like to welcome everybody again to New Goloka for the Sunday program. And what we're going to do tonight is, I don't know if it's so unusual, we're going to read 2 verses from the Bhagavad Gita, and then after that, we're going to explain the whole 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Because these 2 verses are an introduction to the 8th chapter. And the 8th chapter is very interesting in the Bhagavad Gita because you have certain questions, which we're going to go over, that Arjuna asks, and the whole chapter is dedicated to Krishna answering those particular questions. Oh, you got a garland. Okay. Hopefully it'll fit. Sometimes it doesn't fit. So, first we'll chant Jai Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava, Kunja Vihari. Gopijana Madhava Giri Badadhari Gopijana Madhava Giri Badadhari Yasodanandana Prajajanandana Yasodanandana Prajajanandana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamuna Tera Vanachare Jai Hurad Umadhura Punya Bihagavir Jai Hurad Madhura Punya Bihagavir Gopijana Manabha Idivadudhagude Gopijana Manabha Idivadudhagude Yasodanandana Vrajajanandana Yasodanandana Vrajajanandana Yamunatera Vanachare Yamunatera Vanachare Jai Hurad Homadhava Punya Vihari Jai Hurad Homadhava Punya Vihari Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Paravatikacharya also Teta Satashi Shimad His Divine Grace Abhaya Charananda Bhaktivedanta Goswami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anantakoti Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Hridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shidwaita Gadadha Shiva Siri Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radhakrishna Gopikavanath Saim Kundu Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavanam Ki Jai Maturadam Ki Jai Jagannath Swami Ki Jai Yamunamai Ki Jai Shrimati Lasi Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai Gaur Premananda Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namahom Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Budale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nivashesha Shanyavadi Paschachate Jatani. So Omagana Timinanda Shah Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Meditam Yena Tasmai Shigurave Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances under the lotus feet of my divine spiritual masters, divine grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada, who so kindly opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge while I was blinded in the darkness of ignorance. So, as I mentioned, we're going to do a summary of the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita is called Attaining the Supreme. In other words, how do you attain the Supreme? But in order to attain the Supreme, you have to know some basic facts. First of all, you have to know something called Tatwas. Tattva means basically certain categories of things that never change. I'll give you an example. One category is the soul. We're going to be talking about that. That's us. We all have a soul, or we are the soul, and it doesn't change. Vijayate mriyate vakadacham. It's unborn. Jo nitya shashvato yam purana nahanyate hanimani sharire. Never born, never dies, never changes. So why do we have to experience all these changes? Even though the soul doesn't change. That's an interesting point. Well, the reason is, just like if you have a white light and you put a different types of filter in front of the white light, then you're going to perceive the white light differently according to the blue, green, yellow, chartreuse filters. So in the same way, our consciousness right now is filtered through matter. But the soul doesn't change. Krishna doesn't change. There's the material world, which basically is always there, but it's mutable, it changes. Of course, that's one of the topics in this particular chapter of the Gita. There's the spiritual world, which never changes. So you got all these things called tattvas. And there's karma. Your karma is changing, but still karma always is there. It's a tattva. It's a category. It doesn't cease to exist. Your karma may cease to exist, but the category of karma is always there. So anyway, so let's get on with this chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And we're going to hear Arjuna's questions to Krishna, which are really important questions, and then I'm going to describe the answers to those questions in terms of how Krishna describes the answers in this chapter. So we're going to follow along, and I'm just going to read. We're not going to do it responsibly. So first text, and we're going to read Srila Prabhupada's purports too, because it's very important to hear Srila Prabhupada's purports to understand what Arjuna is asking. So text 1, Arjuna vacha kim tad brahma kim adhyatmam kim karma purushottama adibhutam cha king proktam adidaivam kim uchyate. So here's the first group of questions. Arjuna inquired, O my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? First question. What is the self? What are fruitive activities? What is this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain this to me. So Prabhupada explains in his purport. In this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with what is Brahman. The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, and yoga principles and devotional service in its pure form. The Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the Supreme Absolute Truth is known as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Wow. Arjuna also inquires about Atma, which refers to the body, soul, and mind. According to the Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to the mind, soul, body, and senses also. Arjuna has addressed the Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means that he was putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the supreme authority able to give definitive answers. And the second text here is also some questions, and very important questions insofar as they relate to what happens at the time of death. Text 2 is, Ariyagya katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale jakatam geyosi niyatatma bhigi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body? Oh, Madhusudana. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? So Prabhupada comments that the Lord of sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by yajna performances, that means sacrifices. But here Arjuna asked who is actually the Lord of yajna, sacrifice, and how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna, because Arjuna is a Krishna-conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudana, so that Krishna might kill the demoniac doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Now the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted, and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus, disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulakshekara, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately so that the swan of my mind can seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of the water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulakshekara says to the Lord, "Now my mind is undisturbed and I am quite healthy. If I die immediately, thinking of your lotus feet, then I'm sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect. But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen. Because at that time, the bodily functions will be disrupted, my throat will be choked up, and I do not know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately." Arjuna questions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, you may think these are just questions. But these questions are so purifying, even before you hear the answers to them. I'll tell a story of how purifying they are. And this is a story from the Gita Mahatmya, which is from the Padma Purana. And the Gita Mahatmya tells stories that illustrate the glories of each and every chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. So here's the story from the Gita Mahatmya. Once upon a time, there was a guy in a Brahmin family. I'm saying guy deliberately. And he was addicted to sinful activities. Anyway, I'm not going to get into the details, but he ate meat, took intoxication, cavorted with unsavory characters, including, a lady. And he was very, very sinful. So, as a result, he took birth as a tree. Because that happens sometimes. Like Srila Prabhupada one time was seeing some people, well, he was hearing about some people or in a place where people were without clothes, and Prabhupada said they can take birth without clothes in the next life as a tree. I guess a tree has bark, so that's a type of clothes. So he took birth as a tree. Okay, so he's standing there as a tree, nice tree. And what happened is, shortly thereafter, there was a Brahmin couple. Now, this is interesting because Brahmins should be in the mode of goodness, right? But sometimes you find people born in a Brahmin family who do things that are not in the mode of goodness. You know, eat meat, take intoxication, do everything like that. I mean, that's the reason we have these 4 regulative principles, because if you don't keep the 4 regulative principles, I think everyone knows them, no intoxication, no illicit sex, no gambling, no meat eating, then you get bad karma and you are in the lower modes of nature, like the mode of ignorance. So anyway, so there was a couple that they were doing some sinful things, but basically the main problem was that they were very stingy. They just kept all the money. They didn't give charity to anybody. And they were just doing their Brahminical activities to make money. Like you see sometimes people will act as a Brahmin and they'll just ask for donation. And they won't be Brahminical in their own lives. So anyway, so they became Brahma Rakshasas. But at least they stayed together. You know, at least the love between them. So this is actually a story that Lord Shiva tells Parvati. You know, some of you may be familiar with this story. So anyway, so they happened to, as Brahma Rakshasas, they took shelter of the same tree where that first Brahmin was. Everybody's following? They were underneath or near the tree or something like that. And they were suffering. And so the lady, Rakshasini Brahmini, she just had some questions of her husband. You know, she wanted to know the purpose of everything. So her questions were the same first 2 lines in this verse. Kim tad Brahma, kim yatman, kim karma purushottama. She was asking, what is Brahman? What is the supreme? Who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What is karma? What is the self? Like that. You don't have to go back to it right now. And so, as soon as she chanted those 2 verses, even without getting an answer, guess what happened? A Vaikuntha airplane came and took her back to Godhead. Because even the questions in the Bhagavad Gita are purified. Interesting, isn't it? And then, when this Brahmana who was a tree at that point heard those questions, he took a human form and he kept chanting these 2 lines over and over again. You can close the door so the air conditioning doesn't escape. Yeah, you don't want to have hot air. So he kept chanting these 2 lines over and over again, and then he went back to home, back to Godhead. Pretty interesting, isn't it? So even the questions are purifying. So now let's talk about the answers to those questions. I'm not going to try to keep this short. So the first one is, what is Brahman? Krishna answers this in several different places. Of course, the word Brahman means the greatest, and in one context. But in the context of this verse, it means what is spirit. And as Prabhupada and Krishna answer in this chapter, spirit is the nature of us. What does that mean? We are eternal, as I mentioned before I started reading the Gita, that we are eternal. We are part and parcel of Krishna. We're the same nature of Krishna. Krishna is spirit. Krishna's expansions are spiritual. The spiritual world is spiritual. So this is what spirit is Brahman. So that question is answered. That's the first question is answered. And then that's connected to the second question, which is, what is the self? The self is spirit. But the third question is, what is karma? Karma is actually the manifestation of the bodies. That's called parabdha karma. There's different types of karma. Parabdha karma means our karma is manifest by the way we look. Oh my God. Where we're born. What diseases we have. That's called prarabdha karma. That's very interesting. There's other types of karma too. There's kuta, which means the inclination to do karma. Karma means fruitive activities. And the result of fruitive activities. Also the word karma can mean work too. But in this particular context, it means fruitive activities and the results of fruitive activities. So this body is a result of karmic activities. If we were very, very nice in our last life, karmically nice, then we get a very, very handsome or beautiful body. We get a healthy body, a long-lived body. And if we were very, very bad, guess what? We get a body that ain't so nice, or even less than a human body. So that's karma. So anyways, let's talk about, that's called prarabdha karma. And then kuta means the inclination to do karmic activities. Bija means a specific seed of desire to do specific activities. Aparabdha karma means the karma you haven't gotten yet, and prarabdha karma means the karma you have gotten. And so all this is described in the the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. The different aspects of karma. So the next question is, what is this material world? The material world is described by Krishna as being endlessly mutable. It's always there. Sometimes it's manifest, sometimes it's unmanifest. Krishna describes this in this chapter. Bhutva, bhutva, paliyate. Sometimes it gets destroyed. Not destroyed, sorry. Sometimes it becomes as the pradhana in the inherent stage, the seed stage, and sometimes it becomes fully manifest, but it's always there. So it's always changing. Actually, as one Greek philosopher once said, you can't even step into the same river twice. I believe his name was Heraclitus, if I remember correctly. So everything's changing, because this is the nature of the time factor. And Krishna also describes, it's always changing, endlessly mutable, but it's also, as Krishna describes later in this chapter, it's a source of misery. Abrahma bhuvana loka punavartino Arjuna mamu pechu dukantiya punajama navijate. He describes wherever you go in this world, whether you are Yastrindra Gopa Atavendra Hosvakarma, whether you are Indra in the heavenly planets, or whether you are an Indra Gopa, little germ, then it's a source of misery. What are the sources of misery? Adhyatmic, adhibodic, adhidaivic. Miseries from the body and mind, miseries from other living entities, and miseries from the material nature, just like it's really hot out today, right? Really hot. In some places in the world, it is so hot, the railroad tracks are actually getting deviated. In Europe, that's happening. So they're having to paint the railroad tracks white so they don't absorb so much heat. And the roads are melting. And thousands of people are dying. So this is the nature of this world. That even if you are Brahma, there's still Brahma means the first living entity in the universe, and that's also the demigods too, the other topic mentioned here. You still have to experience the temporary, miserable nature of this world. Then the next question is the Lord of Sacrifice. Of course, as Prabhupada mentions in the purport, the Vedic Lord of Sacrifice, there are actually two Vedic Lords of Sacrifice if you read the Rig Veda, and one is Indra, and the other one is Krishna, or Vishnu. Om Tad Vishnu Paramam Pada Pashantiyat Surya. The Rig Veda states that all the demigods, they are actually looking to Vishnu, not to Indra. And even if Indra misbehaves, as we know from the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, and he tries to kill the devotees of Krishna, what does Krishna do? Does anyone know? He lifts Govardhan Hill to protect them, so he shows his superiority. So Krishna is actually the Lord of Sacrifice. One of the names of Krishna, in fact, is Yajna. In the 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna makes this very, very clear in verse 29. He says that Bhoktaram Jakatapasam Sarva Lokam Maheshwaram Suridam Sarvadegnam Yatva Mam Shantim Richati. That if you actually want to be peaceful, one should understand that Krishna is the Lord of Sacrifice. Bhoktaram, which means the enjoyer. Jagya Tapasam, of all sacrifices, of all austerity. Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, which means he's the Lord of all the worlds. And in this way, and Suridam Sarvabhutanam, here's the good point. He's your friend. He's actually your best friend, Surit, not just a fair weather friend. You know what a fair weather friend is? No? That means everything's going all right, you please his senses, he's your friend. But Krishna's always your friend. That's one of the things that really attracted me to chanting when I first came to Krishna consciousness, and still does, of course. That I realized if I chanted the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then I could have my best friend with me all the time. I didn't have to text anyone. Of course, there weren't texts when I joined the movement. There were no mobile phones. There was only smoke signals. Anyway, but I realized that. I said, wow. I mean, I had so many friends, but here's someone who is in my heart. Ishwara sarvabhutanam hridesha Arjuna tishtati. And just by chanting, I could communicate with him. And he wanted the best for me. And he would arrange everything for the best. Isn't that wonderful? Think about that when you chant. Your best friend is communicating with you. Suridam sarvabhutanam gyatva mam shantim richati. So this is described in this chapter too. That where's the Lord of Sacrifice situated? In the heart. And he's also situated in his spiritual abode. Goloka eva nibashati akilatma bhuta. He's everywhere, in every atom. He's present in all of his energy. He's present in your heart. And he's your best friend. Wow. So then the question arises, how can one be thinking of him, and especially, how can one be thinking of Krishna at the time of death? I mean, this is the point, attaining the supreme. That's the nature or name of the chapter. So, in this chapter, it describes that whatever you're thinking of at the time of death, what happens? That state of being you will attain. So that's why it's important to think of Krishna. Not that you become Krishna, but you attain your spiritual nature, which is like that of Krishna's, if you think of Krishna. And if you think of something else, then you may become something like that too. Like the story in the Bhagavatam with Bharat Maharaj, a great king. He was such a great devotee, and he was thinking of a little baby, what? Deer. And he became a baby deer. I was just listening to a memory class, and the devotees were talking about Prabhupada's speaking. Prabhupada was walking some street somewhere, and he was watching so many people walking their dogs. And Prabhupada started crying because Prabhupada was understanding that they became too attached. And he even said something like that too. It's not that I'm speculating about what Prabhupada was thinking. They became too attached. Then the next life, the dog would become the man. And the man would become the dog. Isn't that sad? You'd be walked by your dog. Would you like a dog to walk you? No, I don't think that's a good idea. So of course, this is in response to, in relationship to the verse, Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam yajate anti klevaram tam tam nivaiti kandiya siddhatat bhava bhavata. Whatever one is thinking of at the time of death, then that's where one goes. So, but if one thinks of Krishna, one goes to Krishna, and Krishna says, you should always think of me in my form as Krishna, and also what? Work for him. Two things, Krishna says, the way to do it. And so then the question arises, later on in the chapter, how should one conceive of Krishna? Of course, you know, Krishna's beautiful form, like those of you can see that painting over there. Venam kanantam aravinda dalaya kaksham. Krishna's playing his flute, and Radharani is offering some tulsi leaves at his lotus feet. So one can think like that, but there's other ways of thinking of Krishna that are mentioned here in this particular chapter, because the question is, how can one think of Krishna? And I'm going to read some of them. First of all, one can think of Krishna as being omniscient, which we mentioned before, you know, omnipresent, omniscient. He's everywhere. He's aware of everything. He's in everyone's heart. Another way one can think of Krishna is that he's the oldest, not in terms of looking the oldest, because it's mentioned, Nava Yovanam Cha. Krishna is always youthful. So just like Prabhupada commented, that Krishna, when he was on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he looked like a 16-year-old young man. Amazing, isn't it? And he was had been on the earth like something like 125 years. That's pretty good. Navayovanam cha. But understand, oldest means Adi Purusham. He's the original person. Aham sarvasya prabhu matak sarvam pravartate. Iti bantva vrichanti buddha bhava samagvata. Everything comes from me. Om Purnamada Purnamidam. Right? It's Upanishad. Everything is emanating from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He's the source of everything, even of the demigods. Aham Adi Hi Devanam. Another way of conceiving Krishna, according to this chapter of Bhagavad Gita, is that he's the controller of everything. Not a blade of grass moves. So if something happens, you understand that's Krishna. Of course, that doesn't excuse any foolish activity that you may perform. You know, if you jump off the building or something like that, you say, it was Krishna. Krishna made me do it. Krishna made me yell at you. No. You have to take personal responsibility. Another way of thinking of Krishna, this is amazing ways of thinking of Krishna that'll help you remember him throughout the day. He's smaller than the smallest. Smaller than the smallest, and smaller than the atom, smaller than, you know, any of the particles within the atom, the electron, boson, or whatever. So he's the smallest of the smallest. He's the maintainer of everybody. Maintaining, protecting you. He's inconceivable. Inconceivable. Like Lord Brahma says, others may say they know Krishna, and Lord Brahma is the original person under Krishna, after Krishna in this material creation. And he says, others may say they know Krishna, but I don't know Krishna. Because Krishna is unlimited, inconceivable. Even Krishna's own incarnation or expansion as Anantashesh, who has so many heads, thousands of heads, and he's glorifying Krishna. He never comes to an end of the glorification of Krishna. Next thing you can think of Krishna is he's a person like you and me. And he has personal feelings and personal interactions. Next quality he mentioned is Krishna is luminous like the sun. Of course, millions of times more luminous than the sun. And so, these are different ways that Krishna gives of thinking of himself. And I'm sure that there's more ways than that. So then the description is how to think of Krishna in terms of these different ways. What is the process? Okay, what is the process? First, Krishna in this chapter deals with something akin to the yoga process, where you actually, close your eyes, half close your eyes, and stare at the tip of your nose. We're not going to do that. Wow, a lot of people today. And so then Krishna says, gives rules and regulations, celibacy, omkara, closing the doors of your senses. We have all these doors in our Navadware Pure Dehi. In other words, just closing yourself off from the outside world. And so this is not practical for us. So Krishna then comes to the point of constant engagement in devotional service. Devotional service means serving Krishna anyabi lashita shunyam jnana karma navartam anukulyena krishnanushilanam, serving Krishna according to how he wants you to serve him. How does Krishna want us to serve him? Krishna wants us to chant his holy names. Krishna wants us to share Krishna consciousness with others. Krishna wants us to help this Krishna consciousness move and expand. He wants us to help and be compassionate to other people. And this is the actual point, constant engagement in devotional service. And in this way, one will go back to the spiritual world. One of the final things Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, in this particular chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, is he talks a little bit more about the ritualistic ways of leaving this world, which is really interesting. He talks about that when the sun goes to the south, the sun goes to the north. Just like in the Mahabharata, we actually see that grandfather Bhishma waited for the winter solstice before he left his body, right? Winter solstice means that the sun starts to go to the north again. Previously, it's going to the south. So, in other words, anyway, the seasons. And so Krishna talks a little bit about this. He talks about the different times of leaving this world. What's auspicious, what's inauspicious. So then, dark moon night or light moon night. And then you're reading these things, you're getting really nervous. How am I going to make arrangement for myself to leave this world at the right time? You said, oh my God, what if I die before December 23rd? Before Christmas? What? You read this, oh my God, the yogis do this, they don't come back, the yogis do that, they come back. And then Krishna says, at the end, the devotees are not concerned with these things. Because if one is remembering him, if one is serving him, Ananya chintayanto mam yejanak paripasate tesham nityabhayuktamam yogakshema vahamiyaham. Krishna says, if one is devoted to me, that's not from this chapter, but it's the same topic. If one is devoted to me, ananyas chintayanto mam, if one is thinking of me, devoted to me, serving me, following my instructions, serving the devotees, then yejanak paripasate tesham nityabhayuktamam yogakshema vahamiham, then I carry what he lacks and I preserve what he has. So this is really the lesson that Krishna gives in the Gita, that we simply have to be devoted to him and be serving him, and then by that devotional service, all the results that one can aspire for will be given to one, and then ultimately, at the end of this life, one will go back to the supreme abode of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And one will live a existence of eternity, bliss, and knowledge. So, that's the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions? Yes? Tori. How do we balance being compassionate to help people in this world without getting sentimental and materially attached? One, compassion should be based on bringing others to Krishna's lotus feet. Because generally, we may be compassionate to others who please our senses. Our compassion may be mixed with some self-centeredness. So we have to be very careful about that and try to think of Krishna's pleasure while you're helping someone. What would please Krishna? In other words, the compassion is, yes, we're trying to help that person, but the intelligence is fixed upon what activity, what type of interaction is appropriate that would please Krishna, and what type of activity would be appropriate that may not please Krishna. So that of course, these are the first two principles of what we call sharanagati, surrendering to the Lord. Accepting everything favorable for pleasing Krishna, rejecting everything unfavorable. Good question. So, yes, you have a question. Yeah. Okay. Okay. A soul. There's two types of souls. There's the Jiva soul and the Vishnu Tatwas soul. Okay. Those souls are spiritual. Spiritual means eternal, never born, never die. That's what the word means, a general term. But there's other things that are spiritual that don't pertain specifically to the Lord or to the Jiva souls. That would be the spiritual world is spiritual. Even though the spiritual world is comprised of spirit souls and everything like that. But it's spiritual. Also, the Brahman effulgence of the Lord is spiritual. Brahman effulgence, you know what Brahman is. The light that you see surrounding Krishna is spiritual. So the word spiritual can refer to a variety of things, including the souls. Is that? It's a larger term that's more inclusive than just the soul. Just like I can say, cooking for Krishna is a spiritual activity. But it's not that the cooking is a soul. Because the activity is based on pleasing Krishna, therefore it's spiritualized. And there's another verse in the Bhagavad Gita. Brahmarpanam Brahmahavir Brahmagno Brahmano Huktam Brahmatena Kantavyam Brahma Karma Samadhinam. That something that is fully utilized for Krishna becomes spiritualized. That, not only that thing that's fully utilized, but the effort that's there and the result of that effort is fully spiritual. Does that answer the question? Okay. Souls are spiritual, so that's a larger term that includes souls. Thank you. So, I think it's time for Aditya Narayan. So thank you very much for this short exposition on the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. All glories to His divine grace. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare. No. Yeah, this one. Yeah. Okay. Hare Krishna, everyone. So let's first of all thank His Holiness bkgoswami Maharaj for so nicely summarizing the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Hari Bol. Okay. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Thank you. So before we move on, we have a short presentation on Janmashtami, which is 19th of August. And basically, this is our biggest festival of the year. So in this presentation, we are just going to go through what is our plan for Janmashtami, what services we have, and how you can actually sign up for one of the services. Like the main aspect of the Janmashtami festival is, every year we actually get together and we do service together, and before the festival, when everyone comes and offers service as a team, I feel just that joy of devotional service when everyone is serving together is so pleasing to their Lordship Shri Radha Golokananda. There's the appearance of Golokananda on Janmashtami. Actually, even if you consider the deities were installed on Janmashtami of 1985. So it is their actual appearance day here, even in New Goloka Dham. So we want to come together and as a team offer service, please them, and give them a wonderful offering of a big grand festival for their pleasure. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Hare Krishna. Okay. So we'll quickly go through the presentation. Before I go, because I don't want to forget, we have a special gift for everyone during Prasadam. Ujjwala Rasagya Mataji was just last month in Jagannath Puri for Jagannath Rath Yatra. And she has some little Maha water from the Snan Yatra of Jagannath Baldev Subhadra Devi. So it's very, very special, the actual Abhishek of Jagannath Devi. So in the Prasadam line, we'll actually get a drop of that special mercy. So don't miss that special mercy. Okay, so let's start. So Janmashtami is 19th of August. This year is a Friday. So, being like last year it was on a Monday. Still, we got a big crowd. This year, being a Friday, we are thinking that we may get a huge crowd. And to actually, have such a big crowd and organize a big festival, that means more opportunities for all of us to come together and offer beautiful services. So, okay, can you go next? Okay, so basically each slide I'm going to quickly go through like what are the services main services that are available for Janmashtami. And then at the, I can give the link right now. It's a very simple link. It's called bit.ly/Krishna Seva, Krishna Seva. So just go to a link, it's a Google form, you can sign up for any of the services. Okay, so bit.ly/Krishna Seva. Okay. Okay, so the first thing is prasadam cooking. We are known as the kitchen religion, right? So when everyone comes, we want to offer them wonderful prasadam directly from the mercy of Shri Shri Radha Golokananda. So we'll be cooking for at least 3,000 people on the Janmashtami festival. So we need a lot of help. All the cooking will be right here. We'll cook right here, offer it to Radha Golokananda and distribute the prasadam. So if you'd like to help with the cooking seva, and also you don't need to have prior kitchen experience to be there, but you can help with the with the prep, with the cutting of vegetables, with the cleanup, and this service will be on Thursday and Friday. It is full day service. And yeah, and then the cooking will be there. So that's the main cooking for the big feast. And also we have a cooking for the midnight feast, which will be another 500 people. Just for at 12 o'clock midnight, we'll have the special midnight artik for Shri Shri Radha Golokananda on Friday night. And after that, we serve prasadam again. So that prasadam cooking, so that's again 500 people. Cooking for Prabhupada Vyas Puja, that's the next day. So we have that seva. And on that day, this is mainly for those who are Brahman initiated. If you like to offer the breakfast, Rajbhog, and evening cooking seva on that day of Janmashtami. Okay? So these are opportunities for prasadam cooking. And we need a lot of help here. You know, imagine cooking for 3,000 people, you know, cutting of vegetables, you know, getting all the things ready. So on that day, Friday, at least we request everyone if you can take off, and also Thursday there'll be seva, if that's also possible. At least Friday, if you can take off, come early, there'll be so much services, especially in the kitchen area and cooking. Okay? So if you're not able to take Friday off, at least Thursday, if you can come a little early from work, Thursday evening also we'll have a lot of prep seva. Okay? So this is all with cooking. Any comments on this cooking or any questions with this cooking seva? Yeah, you could do any. So all these service opportunities, I'm telling the entire time, but any time that you can come and do it, even if it's just like, okay, 1 hour I can come on Thursday evening and do it, you're always welcome. Okay? So anytime you can sign up. Anything else? Okay, let's go to the next. Okay, now the next one is the festival setup, decorations, setting up the ground. So this is the weekend before Janmashtami. Janmashtami is on, I didn't hear it. August 19th, yes. So the weekend before is 13th and 14th of August. So that's Saturday and Sunday. The whole day we'll have service here. And we'll be, you know, offering lunch and prasadam for all our volunteers. So that weekend, if you can just come as much as possible in the temple, Thursday and Saturday and Sunday, 13th and 14th August, we'll have ground festival setup and decorations. Is that during Janmashtami time is one time when we also take the opportunity to clean up the grounds, you know, and then decorate the entire grounds, whether that's like, you know, making an arch at the setup, setting up string lights, and decorating the entire festival. We want to, when people come in, they should know, oh, today is such a special day. It is the appearance day of Lord Krishna. We want to